So, hello there. Nice to have you all here. I'm also here now, and my face here is here too. So let's hope that stays the way. And today, the plan is to build a similar app to the one I built last week, an AI-powered image generation app. Last week, I built it with React and Node.js as a backend. This week, the goal is to build it with React and Next.js in the end. So using Next.js to build the entire app, front and back, and combined into one app, and still build an app where we can generate images based on a prompt that we, the user, provide with AI. Now, for that, obviously, I'm going to use Next.js. I'm also going to use TypeScript in there because I also want to add authentication with help of better-auth, which is a relatively new TypeScript-focused or TypeScript-only authentication library. I tried using it 2 days ago in my last live stream, and I got started with it, but I was not aware of the fact that it's TypeScript-only there, so I had a JavaScript app, couldn't really use it. Now we'll build a Next.js app with TypeScript and use better-auth to implement authentication. For the image generation, I'm going to use the replicate service, replicate API, which in the end is simply a service that gives you easy access to various AI models. And I will use the Flux image generation models, specifically the Flux Schnell model, which simply takes a prompt, takes some input parameters, and then generates an image. Essentially what I also built in the last session. Hi, SepDev. Really glad to see you here more often. Really enjoying your streams. My screams, hopefully not my streams. Hope you like doing it. I like it a lot. It's really fun. Still, I have to get used to it. Got some technical problems at the beginning with my face, but we'll get there, and I like it a lot. So happy you're liking it too. And hi, Yasin Cicino. Great to have you here too, and great to have all of you here, of course. So let's get started with that, because woo, you are Ocon Free. You are my first subscriber, the first subscriber ever. Fun fact: I only got access to subscriptions. I became a Twitch affiliate yesterday, so I had to figure out what this whole subscription thing is, because I of course I know Twitch, but I'm not watching streams there regularly, so I had to figure out how that all works. I quickly had to create some badges and emotes and stuff. So yeah, you are number one ever. No one can ever take this away from you, but there's still room for number 2, 3, 5. You can still be amongst the first 100. So that might be a thing. But yeah, let's get started with the Next.js application. And for that, I'll create a standard Next application with this command here, the create Next app command. And I'll name it Next Image Gen or something like this. And yeah, I'm happy with those dependencies. I want to build a TypeScript app, so yes. Yeah, let's not use ESLint. Tailwind, I want to use. I don't want to use the source directory. I want to use the app router. TurboPack, why not? Should speed things up, and I don't need a custom import alias. So with that, the project gets created, all the dependencies get installed. Of course, it is a standard Next.js project after all. And I'll keep the app relatively simple. And unlike in the last stream, I'll actually start by building the image generation functionality and then thereafter add authentication and route protection and stuff. Okay, so project is created. So now we can open that. And again, I'll use Visual Studio Code. I also did actually use quite a bit of Cursor over the last months, but here for the stream, I want to have less completions, less AI magic going on. So I'll use VS Code, good old VS Code here. Hello, Seppa89, great to have you here. I hope you'll like the stream and get a lot out of it. So standard Next.js application, we can start the development server, of course, with npm run dev. And that should then hopefully give us the default starting page. Here we are. Looks good. And I will start by adding a new route which I can use to show the image generation screen. So essentially, I mean, there are different ways of building this. We could also use one single route, as I did it in the React app, and we could simply toggle between the image generation part and the authentication part based on the auth status. Here, just to mix things up, I'll use multiple routes. So, of course, we can add a route just as the official docs also tell us. And you might already know that, of course, but in case you're brand new to Next.js, you add routes in the end with help of the file system. You create new files. And let's see, where are they telling us how to do that? Dynamic routes, route handlers. No, that's not it. Is it here? Layouts and templates. Yeah, you create a page in the end by adding a page.js file, and if you add that file in a subfolder, then the name of the folder becomes the path in the URL you can visit. And you can also create layouts to wrap multiple pages with a shared layout and do stuff like that. That in the end is the idea. So here we already have a root layout and a root page, the standard layout and page every app starts with, and I'll add a new route image gen with a page TSX file in there. And in that file, just as in the page.jsx file that was already created, I'll export a React component as the default. I'll name this here image gen page, for example. And then in there, we can return the JSX code that should be rendered on the screen when a user visits that route. So here we could simply output a fragment and say image generation page, something like that. And doing that should then allow us to visit localhost /3000 localhost 3000 /imagegen, and that then loads this page. So that's how routing, of course, works in Next.js. So that might or might not be something new, but it's now on this page, this image generation page, where I want to build a form that takes the prompt and let's say a couple of other parameters like the quality of the image, the format of the image, JPEG or PNG that you want to generate. That's my idea here. And of course, I wrote the code I want to use for that in my last stream already in the end, or in one of the last streams where we built this app with React. So I will copy in some of that logic from there, but we'll also write some logic from scratch again. Now I will bring in some JSX code from that project, from the last screen, and place that here. And in that code, there are a lot of components that won't work right now, like this form component, which also points at an action, the input container, and so on. So I want to bring in those components into my application here. And in Next.js applications, when using the app router, you have various places in your folder structure here where you can store non-page components. Because the idea is that page components are defined through files named page TSX in this case, since it's TypeScript, inside of the app folder or in subfolders of the app folder. Now, when it comes to regular components, let's see, when it comes to regular components, where do they tell us? You can, in the end, place them wherever you want. If they're not named page TSX or layout TSX or one of the other reserved names, it does not really matter where you place them. So let's see if I find it here. I don't, do they name it components, server components? Well, it's not too important anyways. So here I will create a new components folder outside of the app folder in my case, and that's just one possible way of doing it, of course. And in there, I want to have a form TSX file where I want to export a default function named form, which should be that component that gets rendered in my page file here, this component. So a form that takes an action, takes some classes, maybe merges those classes with some default Tailwind classes I want to apply anyways, and so on. That's my idea here. So in that form component, I in the end want to return a simple form, a standard built-in form. And on that form, or to that form, I want to pass the action, which I'm receiving here, so that later we can use server actions, which is a thing in Next.js, which allows us to define actions that are executed when a form is submitted, but on the server, not on the client, which is pretty neat. And I also want to output some children here. So whatever is passed between my form tags should be sent or should be passed as children between those form tags of the built-in form element. That's the plan here. Now, since I'm using TypeScript, I need to add some types here to make TypeScript happy. And there are various ways of defining that. One quick and easy way is to do what GitHub Copilot suggested here, to use the component props without ref, or I think you could also use with ref type that is provided by React, which simply gives you the type definition of a props object that can be accepted by a component. And then here's the special catch. This form value we're passing here in the end to this generic type, to the component props with ref type, tells React that the props object we're getting here is the kind of object we could also directly pass to the built-in form element. That's why I can, for example, forward the action prop I'm receiving here to the action prop of the built-in form component. It works just like that because I'm using that built-in type that can be adjusted for different kinds of HTML elements, in this case for the form element. I do teach all of that in greater detail in my React with TypeScript course if you want to learn more about that, but here for this stream, that's all you need to know, of course. And with that, we create a form component which we can now import and use. Now, action, of course, is not defined because I haven't defined an action here yet, and I'll remove it for now. Now, I'll do something similar for the input container, the label, and the input. So I want to have an input container TSX file here, a label TSX file, and an input TSX file. And my idea here is that I can create reusable components that will, in the end, encapsulate built-in elements, components like input, and make reusing them and especially reusing their styles a bit easier. So for the input container here, I'll export a default function named input container. And here I'll return a paragraph. By the way, one quick check. Yeah, no, that is all right. I mean, one thing I just realized is that for the form, I'm not done actually, because in the place where I use the form, I'm passing this class name prop to it. And that is absolutely okay because class name is an expected prop on a form element, but I'm not using that in here. And of course, I should be using it here. So I should actually extract class name here and then use it. And I want to use it such that I merge it with any default, as I explained before, with any default classes, Tailwind classes I might be setting here. And to perform this merging, I'll install a package, which I also used in the last stream, the Tailwind merge package, which simplifies the process of merging classes, Tailwind classes with other classes, and which handles potential class clashes and so on. So with that installed, I can import from Tailwind merge Thank you so much, Alberto Castani, for the gifted sub. Amazing. You are indirectly, I guess, since it's gifted, number 2. So still the low numbers you can grab here. Thank you so much. It's much appreciated. Really means a lot to me. So here I'll import TW merge from Tailwind merge, and then I can use it here. Set my class name equal to Tailwind merge, and then I can pass in my string full of default class names, and as a second argument, I'll pass in the class name I receive here so that I can overwrite these default class names. And when it comes to the default class names here, I'll just grab them from the code from the last stream. It will simply set a background color, use flex for aligning or for laying out the elements inside of the form, and so on. That's now the finished form. With that, I can now move on to the input container, because there I want to do something similar. I want to return a paragraph. And here I expect to get children and class name. And when it comes to the types here, again, we can use React component props with refs for a paragraph here, actually. And that then makes it very easy to use and accept those props here. And again, I can set my class name here to Tailwind merge, and actually that's not too bad, just don't need the gap. And what's wrong? Oh yeah, of course I need to import Tailwind merge. Okay, so with that I also built the input container. I can import it and use it, and now we can continue with the label, of course. So here for the label, I'll just grab and paste in the code from that last stream. Again, creating a label component using Tailwind merge. Here we need our types. So thank you, Copilot. These are the types for the label here, obviously. Yeah, that should actually already be all, I guess. So now back here. And I'm going a bit faster through all of that because you can watch the recording of the last stream. By the way, you can watch that on this Maximilian extended YouTube channel where I will upload all these recordings. You can watch it here. It's this one, the middle one right now here. And you see how I write all the code in detail there in the end. But it's really straightforward code, of course. So I don't want to bore you with that. Instead, I want to focus on the fun part, which is the authentication, image generation, and all that. So we have a label here. We can import it, use it, and then here we can work on that input. Now, again, I'll bring in the code I prepared before. And here we now got something special going on, because actually input is a polymorphic component, you could say, because it does not always return the same kind of element. It returns either a text area or it returns an input. So if I try to set this type here, TypeScript is actually not happy because the props I'm spreading onto text area here are not text area specific, because I'm actually telling TypeScript that I'm getting some input specific props, which also in addition contain this is text area field here, this thing here. But that is not the same as a text area specific props object. So what we could try doing here is that we set up input props, which is the input props specific object, combined with another object where is text area is set to never, which means it's not present. This is text area prop is not present. And then we can define a second type, the text area props, which is that text area specific props object combined with an object where is text area is true, I guess. And then we can create then we can use that down here, hopefully, as a union type. So now both are mad at me. So theoretically, and I might have a small mistake here, but theoretically, this should actually say that if we do get an object where we have a isTextArea prop and the value of that prop is true, then this also means that the rest of this incoming props object is a text area specific props object. So if we here check whether isTextArea is true, TypeScript should in theory know that props thereafter is just this part here, right? Just text area props. So in theory, this should work. But I do recall, it's been some time since I last built such a polymorphic component with TypeScript. I do recall that it had some problems with figuring out that stuff. And I think I had to take a different route there. So let's try this. I mean, if I don't get it to work, we can always like split this into separate components. But let's see. I think this does the trick. If you do the destructuring in a separate step, if you don't do it here when the parameters are received. Yeah, because this way, the props object I'm getting here is one of the two. But then after figuring out that isTextArea is there and is true, when doing it this way, TypeScript is able to understand that this props object must be this type here, must be of this type, and therefore will include all the text area specific props. Yeah, TypeScript can always be a bit weird, but that is how it works. I hate TypeScript so much, but I think it's just because I'm lazy sometimes. Yeah, I totally get what you mean. I love and hate TypeScript at the same time. I love it really when you're building a complex app and all the types work together and you get great auto-completion, but I hate it so much if I want to get something done quickly or if you're getting some weird error like the one we got here and you just can't wrap your head around what TypeScript's problem is. So it can be super annoying. And for quick prototyping or simple apps, I typically only use JavaScript because I'm not in the mood of going through all of TypeScript's hiccups. Do you use Cursor or another AI? Here I'm using Visual Studio Code with GitHub Copilot. Outside of the streams, I actually do also use Cursor. To be honest, I'm switching a lot, trying out different tools because there's also so much development going on, so much innovation. And sometimes I like a coding environment with less AI support, also because AI can also give you a lot of incorrect stuff, especially when you're working with technologies it doesn't have a lot of information about. So that's why I'm switching a lot, also experimenting a lot. Yeah. I'd rather complain about TypeScript rather than having a horrible bug in JavaScript. You are right. That's why I said for complex applications, having all the TypeScript stuff work together and being able to catch those edge cases early, it's absolutely great. Totally agree. Uncivil, yeah, happy to hear that this is helpful. TypeScript often offers simpler solutions. You just often don't know about them, myself included. I use PHP with Laravel. It is more comfortable for me. Laravel is awesome. I used it a lot 8 years ago, not so much since then, but I might actually get back to it this year because I'd love to check it out again. Really is like it seems to be the framework which gives you like the biggest productivity boost you can get, as it seems. Okay, so we got that. And now with that, let's import into here. And Alberto Castani, thank you so much for the subscription. You are number 3. So still top 5. You are in them. You're still. It's not just top 5. You have the bronze medal right now. So that's really amazing. Okay, So now here I'm getting a type problem, of course, now that we just talked about it. Property type does not exist. Yeah, right. The problem now, of course, is... Okay, the problem now is that here TypeScript is happy, but theoretically, props object could, of course, be all about text area props. Now, I did tell TypeScript that isTextArea is never set as a prop if we're dealing with input props. So theoretically, TypeScript should know that when I have the type here and I don't have... Oh, forget what I said. This should be a text area, and having type text here is simply incorrect. So, good thing we have TypeScript. It caught an error here. Okay, what's wrong here? Now here, property isTextArea is missing. And that's now the weird part. Wow. We got Otropato Mariado. You're number 4. Thank you so much for subscribing. And we got a hype train, whatever that is. But I think it's amazing. I'm new to this whole Twitch thing, so thank you so much for that, whatever it is. Okay, so what's the problem here? We got an input. And theoretically, this should work, because as I just explained, when we don't have isTextArea, we have input props. So what's the problem here? Why is it complaining that isTextArea is missing? Property isTextArea is missing. Yeah, but actually, now I got an error here too. What is the problem here? Why is it not happy with that? If isTextArea is falsy, I mean, I guess the question mark should be back there. Okay, and now with that, that's fixed. Okay. Okay, so that is working again. Now let's work on the rest of this form. And here I got a lot of stuff which is handling form submission, which we will need later, because now we can actually start working on then. You gotta get used to these Twitch notifications. I have to. It's just all happened too quickly. I explained it, or I said it earlier. I just got Twitch affiliate, which you need to be in order to even get subscriptions, yesterday. So I had to like look up all that crazy stuff this unlocks. Yeah, here we are. Okay, let's add a server action to handle the form submission. For that, of course, again, we can take a look at the official docs to learn how that works. And you might or might not be aware of how Next.js works, so I'll quickly give you a brief overview. By default in Next.js, in Next.js applications using the app router, which I am, all these components here are server components, which means they are rendered on the server. The client receives the finished HTML page, so to say. It also receives the interactive React app though. So it's still a reactive component. It just is kind of pre-rendered for every incoming request on the server. And you can also define actions, functions to be executed on the server, but you can tell Next.js that the function should be triggered from the client side, and it will behind the scenes basically send an HTTP request to an invisible API it creates for you on the server, you could say. And that is what I want to do now. I want to create a server action. And you do that, let's see. Yeah, you do that by creating a function in the same component where you have the form, and you add use server in that function. And by doing so, you tell Next.js that it's a server action and that it's not executed on the client. So here I'll have my generate image function. Thank you so much for the subscription, Gabriel Armunos. Thank you so much. Number 5, still top 5, but we still got the top 10 open if there are more. Have you used TRPC opinions? I have used it occasionally. It's been some time since I last used it. And it's, again, it's this whole TypeScript thing. It's really convenient. especially when building a bit of a more complex app, to have it all wired up and have it all work together magically. It's a bit like server actions, where you don't have to think about wiring up everything. It instead just works once you set everything up. That's the caveat. Okay, so here we must add use server. That's important. This tells Next.js that this is a server action. And then in here, as we can see, we will get form data of type form data, which is really convenient. So we get an object with all the form data collected in it. And form data is a built-in type provided by Node.js here in the end. Now I want to extract the prompt which is submitted, and we get this prompt because in my form I have this input here, which is a text area, which has a name of prompt. So here, this name is important. That is what populates the form data, or that's what we can use as a key in the form data in the end. So here with get prompt, I'm extracting the value from that input here with that name. So that will be the prompt the user entered. And we treat that as a string. And then I can also extract the quality, aspect ratio, and format, because these are all the other things I'm collecting with the other inputs. And then before we generate any image, we can do good old console log debugging to see whether that works. We just need to make sure that we pass generate image, this function, as a value to action now. So we don't execute it here, we just pass a pointer to this function to action. In future streams, I would turn down the volume of alerts just a little bit. I know this is the first stream, but yeah, feedback like this is always amazing and helpful, Scumble. Much appreciated. And I can turn it down right now, I think. Twitch alerts. No, I can't do it here, but I will do it in future streams. Good mention here. Yeah, I don't think I can do it here, but we'll note it for the future. Okay, so let's see if that works. Of course, for that, I first need to get rid of all these errors. So actually, let's get rid of that is pending stuff here. Let's just say, whoops, generate here as a caption and comment out all that stuff. And with that, back here, we should hopefully get our ECMAScript file had an error. Server actions must be async functions. That is correct. We need them to be async, even though we're not doing any async stuff in there right now. Okay, so that's our beautiful form. What's this error? React does not recognize the is text area prop on a DOM element. If you intentionally want it to appear in the DOM as a custom element. Right, so I'm getting this because I'm forwarding all my props to text area, and that includes the is text area prop. So I guess, does it work if I pull out the other props like this? Nah, then it complains that it's not necessarily a text area thing. Yeah, let's ignore it for now. Let's test whether the submission here works. Okay, maybe it would also be nice if we could read this, if it would not be white or gray on white. So let me fix that real quick. For this, do I set text color somewhere here? What about setting text here? Yeah. Okay, so if I try to log a cake here, that's the other error, and that's the wrong console. We need to take a look at the console that runs our server, because this code, as I said, runs on the server. So here it is. We got our submitted data in that object. So that is great because that is working, and I'll just ignore that is text area problem right now because it's not blocking our app from working. So we're gathering all that input. The next step now is to generate an image with help of replicate, as I mentioned, with help of this model. They do actually tell us, whoops, here, how we can generate images with Node.js. And here we learned that we need to install the replicate package and then initialize it with our replicate API token. So a token you can get if you sign up with their service. And that's therefore what I'll do. I'll create a new file. Actually, I'll create a new folder, a util folder, let's say, and in there an image TypeScript file. And in there, I want to do all that image generation stuff. So here I'll export a function generate image, something like this. And I expect to get a prompt here, which is of type string, and some options, which should be an object where I, in the end, get quality, aspect ratio, and format. So the data I'm gathering from the form. So format, that should be a JPEG or a PNG or a WebP file, let's say, using literal types as a union type here. Aspect ratio, I think it's written with an underscore for them. So why not expect it as such here? And actually, you can accept more aspect ratios than those three. You would probably learn about it somewhere in their official docs. But in my app here, I just offer these three options, 1:1, 16:9, 4:3. So that's what I'll use here. And then for the quality, I want to get a number. Okay, and then later we'll do stuff here. Now, of course, we need to install the replicate package for this all to work. So let's npm install replicate. And with that installed, I can restart the development server. I also need to make sure that this replicate API token is set. Now, as I said, I have an API token, but I will not set it here on screen, of course. I will set it in a .env file here, which should be handled and parsed and used by Next.js automatically, but I'll not do that on screen. Instead, I'll do it off screen real quick. So let me grab my token, my API key. That's the wrong tab. Here we are. Okay. So that should now be set and should work. And I'm so much in love with coding, and I'm still on your course on JavaScript and currently trying to build my first project. Please help me understand what is the easiest way to understand coding. I admire your code so easily without looking for aid. Please talk about this on my behalf. How did you easily understand computer programming? How should I position my mind to understand it easily? So, Amatas Group, I know if you're getting started with coding, it can be super overwhelming. I'm pretty quick, because I've been coding for many years now, and I've also used Next.js and React for, I guess, like 4, 5, 6 years, even longer. Well, even longer. So it's really just experience and practice, and that's, I guess, the best recommendation I can give you or anyone who's starting to learn to code or who wants to get better. It's all about building stuff. Of course, watching courses, reading tutorials, or going through tutorials, reading books, that's all great. Obviously, I do sell courses for a reason. I think it's a great resource. But to get really better and to learn things by heart, so to say, you have to build demo projects. If you just watch videos and follow along with the projects there, you're not really challenged to solve your own or solve the problems that come up in your own projects, but that is actually where you will grow the most. If you're facing some problem in an application and you have to find a solution on your own by diving into the official docs and so on, that is how you will grow. And it's not something that happens overnight, of course. It's like a steady process, but that really is the key to become better. And not giving up is, of course, also the key, because it can be frustrating, I know, but that is, at least for me, how I got better and still do get better. Okay, enough of that talking. We got the replicate object here now initialized, and now we can use this code here to generate an image. Of course, the prompt should be the prompt we feed into this function. So prompt here takes my prompt. And then for some options, I want to use my options and not the default options. So for the aspect ratio, I will actually check if options, or I'll use options aspect ratio. And actually we could make that optional. We could make all these options optional here and then check if that is set. And if it's not set, we use this as a fallback. And then the same thing here for the format and for the quality too. And then we need this to be an async function because the run method here provided by replicate returns a promise, which we need to await, which I'm doing here. And then we'll see what this gives us. So that's the generate image function that uses replicate. Let me get that out of the way here so that I don't accidentally open it. And now back here in our server action, we can call generate image. And I guess now we got multiple generate images here. So I'll name this here generate image action to avoid confusion. And then I can call the generate image from the other file here, forward the prompt, and construct the options object, which includes all those options, parsing the quality to be a number, and then importing generate image here. And what's wrong about format? Type string is not assignable to type JPEG, PNG, WebP, or undefined. Yep. Here I'm saying it's any string, but actually should be a string of specific options. And these are the options I'm presenting down here. So actually, I can be more specific here and cast this to this union type of literal types. And I think now the problem is that this here should also be named JPEG without DE. For the aspect ratio, it's the same thing. I want to define specific values. Yeah, and of course I named it aspect ratio, so I should name it as such here too. Oh wow, we got more questions. Hey Max, React and Node instead. Can you use Next.js? Could you explain? So I am using Next.js here. I used React and Node standalone decoupled in a stream last week, and you can watch the video on YouTube if you want to see that. And I'm using different technologies simply to show these different approaches, that's all. How is it going? It's going great, having fun. It's my third stream, really liking it a lot. Yeah, Amadeus Group. You're welcome. Really trying my best to share knowledge, and of course, motivating people is part of that, because giving up is not an option. It will be worth it. The fix for my input component is return is text area in props. Okay, I'll revisit this later. Alberto Castani, still it would be worth mentioning the courses he has available. I really enjoyed Max React and TypeScript course. Life gets easier. Yeah, thank you so much for recommending it. I can also recommend it, definitely. In there I show a lot of edge cases and weird stuff that can happen with React and TypeScript. And of course all the basics too, so that might be useful. Vargalu76, love the streams, keep it up. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Really means a lot to me. So before I revisit this input component and try to fix it, I want to get image generation to work. So I'm calling generate image here now, and that should trigger the Flux API or the replicate API and indirectly Flux. So let's give this a try. If I reload here maybe to make sure everything's loaded and we can ignore that error. If I click generate, I get this thing here. Whoops, this thing. I get an array where the first object is a readable stream object, and that is what is returned by replicate here. That is what I expected to have. So my image stream is the result of accessing the first element on output. Now, looks like replicate does not have great types here. It just says this is some kind of object. Thank you so much for that. So yeah, I think I can do as any here to like make my life a bit easier, because I don't want to look up the exact type it would be and rebuild that here. That would waste a lot of time here. We could use a library like sort to do some dynamic validation and automatically infer the type, but to make some progress for now, I'll do the good old quick and dirty as any. So I know that this should be an image stream object. And now I need to convert this image stream object to an image, so to say, to some bytes I can send over the wire. Now, theoretically, you could also send such a stream over the wire. Node.js has great support for streams. You can do a lot of stuff there. I might take a look at that in a future Twitch stream, no pun intended. But I actually tried sending that stream. So doing something like pipe and send that through a response to the front end, and that did not work in the last stream. So it looks like it's a custom stream object built by the replicate people that does not work like the other node streams. So what we can do instead, what I did in the last stream and what I will do here, simply just because it worked, is I will create an image blob by awaiting image stream blob, because there happens to be a blob method on that thing, on that object that is returned to me by the replicate SDK. And I know that because they mention it somewhere in their official docs. Somewhere they mention it. So there is a blob method. And they can then create an image array buffer by calling array buffer on that blob thing. That will give us, in the end, an array of bytes, you could say. And now I can convert this to a buffer that should be sendable over the wire by using the buffer buffer class provided by Node.js. And that should then be an image thing we can return like this via a response to the client side. At least this is how we could do it when using a Node.js REST API. Now we'll see if that also works with a server action. I haven't built this in advance, so we'll find out together. So the idea is that I get back an image here after awaiting generate image, which I can return and use. Because of course, server actions should also be able to return data, which you could then use in your component. You can also do other stuff. You can redirect and do all kinds of stuff, but that should also be something you can do. I guess there also might be other ways of handling this, and with Next.js you could also build API routes, but here I'll give it a try like this. Now, the thing is, once I start returning something here, the action prop here isn't happy anymore. But before I continue here, let me quickly see. I got a new subscription here by Dira JDev. I hope I pronounced this correctly. Thank you so much for subscribing. Really much appreciated. And I think I missed one subscription. Is that possible? Yeah, P1VO set or Pivas. I missed you. Sorry so much. Thank you for subscribing. You are all awesome, of course. Love the stream. Keep it up. Thank you so much. Does anybody on here or know if there are any paid to train entry-level developers out there or in Atlanta? Okay, yeah, that's not something I know, unfortunately. Okay, so now I'm getting an error here because I'm returning something, and that's not something the action prop wants. The solution for that should be to use action. Let's see, use action state. That is a hook you can use to wrap a server action, and then that server action can return data, and use action state makes that data available. And it's a hook provided by React itself, which is also used by Next.js in conjunction with server actions, because in theory server actions are also a React thing. You just can't use them in all the React apps. Yeah, like a lot of those new React 19 features, I guess. So use action state is simply a React hook I'm importing here. And the idea is that we can pass a pointer to our action to use action state, and we'll get back an array. And we also need to pass in an initial state. And the idea with that is that use action state then gives us an adjusted version of that action, which we can pass to our form, but it will actually track the execution of our action and also give us access to any values that might be returned by our action. And it will then update the component on the client side if our action does return a value. That's kind of the idea here. Now, what's the complaint here? Argument is not assignable. Types of parameters. Yeah, the problem now is that once you pass an action to use action state, you must change its signature, or the parameters it accepts, because now it no longer gets just a form data. Instead, it also gets the previous state. And that previous state, what's the type of that? The previous state is of type... what's the previous state? Oh, it actually should be... Yeah, of course, it should be the state I'm returning here. So I guess I'm returning, let's say I'm returning an object here with an image property where the type is buffer any. Then the initial state should also have an image property, which is of type buffer wrapped around anything. Like this. And here, and we could make image optional actually. And here we need to set an initial state which has the same type. Now actually I want image to be optional, but I guess we can also just set it to null here. Well, why is this not working? Image. I don't want to have an image initially. Am I overlooking something obvious here? So thank you so much, Alberto, for the 50 bits. Sorry for putting you in the spotlight, but do you prefer Next.js or Remix at this moment? Plus, I am testing if the bits notifications work. They do work, as it seems. And to be very honest, I kind of prefer Remix, or React Router, as it's called now. Simply because, so Next.js has a lot of great elements, and it is clearly the most popular, most used meta framework for React. So I would use Remix if you're like looking to work in that area as a professional. But if I'm working on my own like side projects or anything like that, I find Remix to be a bit slimmer, faster, like the development server is a bit faster and all that stuff. And I'm also not a huge fan of file-based routing in general, so it helps that you can work around that easily now with React Router being remixed in the end and not everything being named page TSX. So it's just a personal thing, but I do kind of prefer it. But yeah, Next.js is also great. It's just like, if you ask me, it's probably remix. So what is the problem here now? Why is it complaining about the fact that the image property is missing? After all, that should be optional here. Is use action generic? Can I just tell it? Argument of type previous state, which might have an image buffer or not. Form data is not assignable to type of parameter to parameter of type state. What do you want from me here? Target signature provides too few arguments. Expected 2 or more, but got 1. I might have like an obvious typo or something here. Looks like a really obvious problem I'm kind of missing here. Where am I passing 1 argument where it wanted 2? Is it this generic type maybe? Let's take a look at the docs, shall we? I have used this hook 1,000 times probably, also with TypeScript, but somehow this is not working the way it should. I mean, that is also kind of why TypeScript can be annoying. It's probably like a super obvious, simple error I'm just not seeing here. But still, I am not seeing it here. I mean, the signature is correct, right? We got the action as a first argument, initial state as a second argument. And I guess like using null here is not something it's happy with, right? So I won't be able to get away with that. Also not if I accept null here. Ah, okay. So that's the solution then. That I don't have to. I have to explicitly set null. I can't just omit it, but I don't have to set an initial state. That is what I want, because initially there is no image. But after the first submission, there will be, because I'm returning one here. And then use action state gives us an array where the first element is the new state, so either nothing initially or this object with the image. And then the adjusted form action, because it's wrapping my form action, as a second element. So I got my state here, got my form action here. The form action is what I pass to action now. And the state is now an object with an image property or null. So now I need to use this image, if we have it, to output an image down here. So in the end here, yeah, in the other app, I also had a result property where I basically, which I used to manage errors. We could do this here too. So let's set a result here. Let's set it to success. And then we can check if we have a state to begin with. Whoops. If we have a state, and if we have a state and we don't have a result property at all, that means, no, actually if we don't have a state, if at all, if it's null, for example, then that means that we haven't clicked the generate button yet. So that's when I want to show that fallback message. If we have a state and state result is error, then I want to show that error message. Now, of course, for that to work, I also, I need to add like an error key to my state. So let's simplify it. Let's say we also have error, which is null here. or which is an empty string. And then we can check down there if we have error, if it's truthy, and an empty string won't be truthy. And in that case, I'll output the error. Otherwise, if we have a state and state error is falsy, checked with this exclamation mark, that means we have no error, it's an empty string, then I want to render the image component. Now here I want to set the alt text to the prompt we used and set the source to the image. And the problem is that the image now is this weird buffer thing, which is great for sending it across the wire, but which is not so great for rendering it in an image element. So what I need to do is construct a URL, for example, that can be used on that image element. And that's what I did in that last week, in that stream last week too. And you can construct such a URL by using the built-in URL class prototype that's provided by JavaScript. That's also available on the client side. And then there you can use the createObject URL method and then actually pass that blob to it. And you can construct such a blob based on that buffer. That's the idea. Now, of course, this only makes sense if we have state. So here, I'll actually add a URL variable, set it to an empty string, for example, and then I'll check if state is set and is an image, and then we can actually set URL equal to that URL that's created here. And what this will give us is like basically a super long string in base 64, which is actually accepted by that image element though, so which you can use as a URL here. So that will then be what we can use here, that URL. And now for that prompt, to have some nice alt text, we can add another property here, prompt, and set that to the prompt we're extracting from the form, so that we have that available in our state too. Lots of talking, lots of hacking around, but now we hopefully have an image that we can see when the user clicks generate. Oh, right. Now we have a different problem here. I forgot about this. It's been some time. UseActionState, of course, is a React hook. And there's one thing you can't do with React hooks. You can't use them in server components. And as I mentioned before, all your components in Next.js are server components by default. So we can't use that here. Now, there are different solutions. We could convert this all here to a client component by adding useClient up here. If you do that, though, you have to outsource the server action and put it in another file, because you can't have a server action defined in the same file where you're basically telling Next.js that everything is a client component or runs on a client. So that does not work. An alternative would be to outsource the part where you use this UseActionState hook into a different component. Now, essentially, since pretty much all about that component here is about using that hook here, I guess it's easier to simply outsource this action here into a separate file. So that's what I'll do. I'll add a new folder, actions, and have my image TS file in there, export this generate image action function there, move use server to the top. You can and should do this if you are putting server actions not inside of a component, but into a separate file. And then import generate image from the util folder and image there, like this. And then back in page TSX, we don't need that import. Instead, I now import generate image action from that actions folder we just worked in, and I'll have useClient at the top here. That should now get rid of that error. That's still that other error. So that now we have a client component that can still access a server action though. It's simply how you have to do it in Next.js. It is how it works. Uncivil, yeah, thank you so much for that other solution in use action state. Set the argument to the null type. I think that's what I'm doing right now, right, with null. Anyways, it's working now, so let's leave it as it is. Max, is there an exact time you're streaming? Love the way you solve problems. So I do plan to do this regularly. I'm just not sure if I want to commit to a specific day, because it's not like I have time every Thursday evening, but probably it will be something along those lines. Every Wednesday, every Thursday evening, maybe both days, maybe at least one of the two. That is what I'm aiming for. Is there a disadvantage to adding that use client there? Will we now take advantage of SSR here now? Yes, good question. We actually do. Client components, despite their name, are still pre-rendered on the server. So we can actually inspect the page source code here, and you will find that form in there. And that is the code that was sent over the wire. So it's still pre-rendered on the server. However, it's not re-evaluated on the server. And that is what would be the case for server actions. Server actions are only executed on the server. So if something changes there, it happens on the server. For client actions, they are initially pre-rendered on the server, but then they're sent over the wire and run as client-side components. Kraken Papa Play, thank you so much for subscribing. Still in the top 10, number 8. You're awesome. Thank you so much. So let's give this a try now. Let's run our prompt, and that does not look good. We got an error. React, yeah, that's the one error. Only plain objects can be passed to client components. So I can't send my buffer here, which is weird because that did work in Node.js, where I also sent it with a network request. But sure. I mean, there should be one easy workaround, to be honest. We can create that base64 URL on the server, so in the server action. Instead of sending back image as a buffer, we can send it back as a string. And actually, we don't need, okay, that's the wrong place. I need to go to the image in the util folder. Here, we can use that image blob, I guess, pass that to create object URL and get our image URL here, and then return that image URL. And now we don't need to create those buffers. So we create a base64 representation of the image here in this utility function. In the action, we now get this string, and then I'm returning this as a string. And that also, of course, now means that in the page here, we no longer need to manage that URL. We no longer need to create it here. Instead, our state will already have image as a string. So down here, we can simply use state image. So gives us a simpler component here. Something happened here. It's just not showing up. So that should be, okay, it's not displaying that. That should be the thing it's trying to show, but somehow it did not generate or send this correctly. It's nice to see you live. Big fan of yours. Bought a lot of your courses. Thank you so much. Really amazing to hear that. It's nice to have you and everyone else here. Do you plan on posting your stream plan schedule on X? Yeah, I'll definitely always post on X. That's the plan. I'll try my best to think about Discord. And if there is a more regular schedule, I'll also add it here on Twitch. I think you can't say on Twitch, hey, I'm streaming next Thursday. You can just like commit to a general schedule. So that's why I don't have it on here right now. Yeah. So the problem here is that this image, which I'm generating, this image URL can't be sent across the wire for some reason. I mean, it shouldn't change anything, but I wonder if I do create my own array buffer and then create a new blob like this, it really shouldn't change anything, but maybe it does. I guess it's worth a try. The sources argument must be a sequence. Okay, so no, it was not happy with that. Thanks to your Node.js course, I managed to succeed on creating a POC during my internship in 2023. That's amazing. I'm so happy that my course was helpful. So thank you so much for the amazing feedback. Always great to hear stories like that. Stringify, you mean JSON Stringify? I'm not sure. That shouldn't change anything because image URL is already a stream. I guess we can just take a look. Next.js server action image blob. Let's see. How to the backend is not what I want. I mean, we could also, for example, store the image on the backend or on S3, which I wanted to do. It's just probably a bit too much of a time investment here. So we could store the image on the backend and then send the path to that image to the client side. We could do something like that. But maybe I can also find a quick solution for simply sending it across the wire. I actually have never returned a blob-like thing in a server action. So I'll have to see how that works. Just to confirm, you break out the server action into a separate file so that you can put use server on it and use client on the main file. Yeah, that's true. You can use server actions in client components. You just are not allowed to define them in the same file where you also use client. It's like a technical thing. Image upload is not what I want. It's really weird that sending that base64 image and using it, that this does not work. That's really weird. That's all upload. Maybe there's an example with replicate. There is, but are they generating images? Well, they are also creating API endpoints here. That's not helpful. So that's not what I need. I guess sending the blob like this. I haven't tried this and not converting it to a buffer. Might work, but I don't think Next.js likes it if you send complex objects like that, but we can give it a try. So now this here will be a blob essentially. So now back here, I need that code again to generate that URL from that blob, which I now get. Yeah, that works. Awesome. So now we have the image here. So what I did now is take a simpler route. I just used that blob, which I can generate with help of the blob method on that object replicate gives me. And I return that blob here. And in the image action, I kind of forward that blob to whoever is calling the action. And in the place where I am calling the action here in the page component, I'm then just creating this base64 URL. So now it is working the way it should. Yeah, asking ChatGPT would have been the next thing I would have done, to be honest. I just always like, if I have the time, I try to find a solution on my own first. Because otherwise there is always the danger of just like copy and pasting. And often enough, ChatGPT, at least in my experience, also gives me solutions which still don't work, but then I'm even more confused. So now I got that working here, which is great. If we try a different aspect ratio, let's see. Unexpected response. Okay, can I see that response somewhere? Body exceeded. Okay, I sent an image that was too big, essentially. Okay. Yeah. So the better approach here, and actually the approach I originally wanted to implement, would be to store that image not here in the file system, because if this is an app running on some server, the file system might not be persistent. If I deploy a new version of the app, the old stuff might get erased. So instead, storing it on something like S3 and sending back the URL to the client and storing that URL in a database. That is what you would typically do. Maybe in a future stream. For now, I'll just try to request small images and we'll work with this approach here. But keep that other thing in mind. Is it a free access to the Replicate API, or do you have a paid plan? I have a paid plan. Using these Flux models costs money. So image generation works, at least roughly. Styling here, let's not talk about it. Input component still has a problem here. And I think, Uncivil, you posted a possible fix for that. Return... Okay, let's see. What did you... Return is text area in props. And is text area... I'm not 100% sure if I understand. Is return... Oh, you check if is text area is in props. So like this, I check if this key exists and if it is true. But this error is still there. Because this error is essentially React complaining that that the is text area prop is present because I'm spreading the props object, which includes is text area, onto text area. I guess one thing I could do here is I could check with a good old if statement and return that here and have like a else block here and return that here, and then in that if branch, or actually, no, I can leave it as it is, sorry, I can leave it as it is, and I could try deleting props is text area so that I get rid of this property. Okay, but I can't delete it. Okay, so never mind. That's TypeScript, so, and React, of course, complaining. I guess the other workaround would be to have it all lowercase, is text area. Like this. And then here also like this. And React is happy. No, because it's true. Yeah, so instead of hacking my way around that, I'll go back to that other solution here. And for now, I'll just ignore it. And possibly look for a cleaner solution in a future stream. Or I could use as, yeah. That is a good solution, actually. I could use an if statement as I had it before. So like this. Return that stuff here. And then we can try to cast this. So we could try to say, I don't know, props as text area props. No, text area props includes that. So as text area props. Yeah, as this here, right? As an object. Okay, I'm not getting rid of that. Let's not waste time here. Let's focus on authentication, because that's the next part I want to implement. Obviously, the styling should also be improved here, but I want to make some progress. And better-auth is a package I'm really interested in using. And I tried using it in my last stream, didn't work out so well because I had a JavaScript app and this is a TypeScript-only package. And I really want to take some time to explore that package. And I have to leave in like, oh gosh, in like 45 minutes. So I rather focus on that right now and fix the rest in future streams. So better-auth is a package that simplifies authentication. By the way, this is not sponsored or anything like that. I'm just genuinely interested in that package because authentication can be both simple and complex. Building a very basic JSON Web Token authentication is not that difficult, but building a good secure authentication, which maybe also supports features like email verification, password resetting, and so on, is pretty tricky. So that's where better-auth comes in. It's not an auth service like Auth0 or something like that, where you pay for having them manage authentication, but instead it's a package you can use in your own apps to roll your own authentication system based on this package. And they allow you to set up basic email password authentication, but you can also use social authentication providers like Apple, Google, Facebook, and so on. So that all works. Auth in 45 minutes, let's go. Yeah, let's see. So we'll start here. We'll go through the docs because I also haven't really used this package. I tried using it, as I mentioned, but not so successful. So let's install better-auth into this TypeScript project. And thankfully, they have like an official Next.js integration and guide. So that should come in handy, I hope. But first, installing it. And then we can restart the development server. And then I need to set up a secret key, store it in an environment variable. So again, I'll do that off screen. And set up my better-auth secret and store that in my env file. And also set up this environment variable for the base URL, because better-auth in the end, behind the scenes on the client side, will communicate to its server side counterpart, because better-auth manages both server and client side, as I understand it. And you have to tell it where exactly is the server side logic running. In this case, in the next app, it's the same domain as for the front end. It's localhost 3000 during development, but you could, of course, also build a decoupled front end with a decoupled backend, and then you would have the domain of the backend here, so that better-auth is able to send requests there. So now it's better-auth URL equals localhost 3000. Okay, so that should be all set up in my env file now. Did it behind the scenes. Now we need to set up better-auth on both the server side and client side. And I'll take a look at the Next.js guides here, because maybe I already need to deviate here. Before you start, make sure you have better-auth configured. If you haven't done it, check out the installation. Okay, so we go through all these steps first. Create a better-auth instance here. Create a file named auth in the project root, lib, or utils folder. So, I guess you can also nest any of these folders under source, app, or server. Okay, so I guess I can add an auth.ts file under app if I wanted to. So here, auth.ts. And in that file, I will now create a new better-auth object. And then we need to configure the database, because better-auth will manage all that stuff for us. It will create users when we tell it to do so, and store user data in a database, hash the passwords, retrieve data from the database. It will do all that user and session management, and it needs a database for that. And I will use SQLite here. So actually, I'll copy that code. And I need to install that SQLite package, which is an amazing package for working with SQLite. And I also need the types, since we're using TypeScript. Okay, so this will then create a database. Let's name it app maybe. And that's the database where better-auth will store its stuff, its things. What would you recommend for auth for Node.js, Next.js apps except better-auth? So I liked Lucia a lot. But unfortunately, it's kind of deprecated. You can still use it, but it's not getting actively developed anymore. But that was a great library too. Other than that, you can of course use services like Auth0. If you don't want to use such a service, and that's the problem, I actually don't know which other great authentication solutions exist. Obviously, there is Passport.js. It's like the established, super old, super stable package for managing authentication. At least that's what I used in the past in Node.js apps. You can use it with Express.js and so on. So that might be worth a look then. Okay, but back to the authentication and to the installation docs. So this is now set up. We don't need that. We don't need any adapters. We need to create database tables. And for that, we need to basically generate migrations. So basically SQL instructions that can then be executed by better-auth. And they give us a convenient command for that, npx better-auth CLI generate. Let's see if that works. Sure, let's create them. And this creates a schema here in that folder. So in the end, these are just a bunch of instructions that will create all the tables that are needed by better-auth. A users table, a session table for managing the sessions, and so on. As a next step, we need to run these migrations. So right now they were only created. Now we need to run them to have an impact on the database. And with that, these tables are now created in that SQL database, which is why we now also have that SQLite DB file here, which is now that SQLite database. SQLite is awesome, by the way. Okay, authentication methods. So now we have to tell better-auth which kind of authentication we want to have here. And that is where you could unlock all those social providers like Google. But here I'll just stick to simple self-rolled email and password authentication. So enable that. And to handle API requests, you need to set up a route handler on your service, on your server. Create a new file or route in your framework's designated catch-all route handler. Okay, so as I mentioned, better-auth handles both client-side and server-side, and it will automatically send requests to the backend when we, for example, try to sign a user in on the front end. So we need to set up a place for better-auth to listen for all these incoming requests. We need to set up a route. And conveniently, it shows us that for Next.js, when using the app router, we do this by creating this route here. So we create an API subfolder in the app folder, in there a auth subfolder, in there this catch all route here, that is Next.js syntax for catching all kinds of requests that reach anything inside of this auth folder, and then a route.ts file. Route.ts instead of page.ts, because we don't want to render a page, we just want to set up a API route in the end. So it's API auth all route.ts. Whoops, route.ts. That's the file we need here in this subfolder, API auth all in square brackets. And in there, we then have this code. Now, auth is actually my auth, my auth thing from app auth. And then we have the Next.js specific helper provided by better-auth, which in the end exposes a post and a get route, which are now fully handled by better-auth. So we don't need to write any code here. It sets up these routes, which will then be called by the client side. That's the idea. Clerk.js, yeah, another decent option for handling authentication. better-auth is not a middleware here. It's actually really setting up API endpoints that handle incoming requests. I'm not sure. We will maybe use it as a middleware later to protect some routes. I'm not sure yet how that works in better-auth world, but for handling these requests, for signing in a user, for example, we're setting up API endpoints with that step. So now on the client side, we can set up the client side part of better-auth to trigger authentication, for example. So to sign a user in or to create a user. Of course, for that, we need a client side. And right now, I only got this one page, this image gen page here. So I now also need a login page. And for that, I'll use the root page here, the home page. Clear all that stuff here. And then, whoops, take the code from the stream from last week to set up my auth form here. So I'll return a fragment where I output a form, have my input container and my label and my input. Then we'll need some error handling and so on. Yeah. Okay, we'll take care of all that stuff down there later, and I'll remove the action for now because I don't know yet how I should wire this up. I guess the docs will tell me. But now I need to set up this client here, and I will do that in I mean, I have auth.ts here, but that runs on the server side. So now I need a client side. So maybe have like a client subfolder and in there an auth.ts. And now I'm setting up better-auth here, but that's now for the client side part of it. So that's the base URL of the server where it will send the requests to. Makes sense. And that's it. Okay. So now we can get access to these methods from this auth client we're setting up on the client side to sign up or sign in a user. So now I wonder, what do they say here in the next integration part? Okay, they tell me how to set up a API route. I already did that. Create a client. We did that. Yeah, RSC and server actions. That's interesting. Yeah, but I don't want to get a session. How do I sign up a user? Okay, so I can have a server action. So interesting. I can call the sign up or sign in methods from inside a server action, but that actually runs on the server. So I set up that client-side part, but it will actually not just run on the client side, technically, I guess. Okay. So I guess on the root page, we now have this auth form here. And I now need a server action for creating a user. So I can go to my actions folder. Where is it? Here. And add an auth.ts file here as well. Got a lot of auth.ts files, but yeah, it is what it is. And in there, or actually add use server first, and then export an async function create user, for example. And I will probably handle this with, let's handle it without use action state for now, because I don't have that much time left today. So actually, I'll get my foreign data here and not the previous state, because I don't plan on using this with use action state. And then in here, I want to extract the email and password from the incoming form. But then I want to call auth client, which I'm importing from that client folder. And then they have a sign up method to which I pass my email and password. Or don't I? Okay, sign up is an object which has an email method, which I call. And to that I pass I think to that I pass, how do I call this? Whoops. How do I call this method? I pass an object to that email method. Okay, so I pass an object to that method. In that object, I have an email key and a password key. And I think I also need a name key, if I remember correctly. And I'll set that to the email for now. And that will then hopefully send a request to the better-auth managed API endpoint on the backend and create a new user. So we can await this because that is probably returning a promise. Yes, it is. And do I get something back here? I get back a result which holds some data about the user that was created. So yeah, why not? We can console log that for now, I guess. And then, if that worked, I probably want to redirect. Now, I'm not sure if this is throwing an error if it fails, or if it's returning an error here. It's returning an error key, as it seems. So I'm getting back some data and potentially also an error. So if we have an error, for now, I'll just throw an error and crash everything, I guess. Failed to create user. Otherwise, we can redirect to the image gen page, I would say. The redirect is provided by Next.js. If I search in the right docs, whoops. We can call redirect from inside server actions, for example. Yeah. Okay. So in theory, this server action should create new users with help of better-auth. Now, of course, I need to go to that homepage where I have this form and wire up this action. So this does not need to be a client component because I'm not using use action state in here. Instead, I can set action here to create user. So to this action I just worked on. And I'll comment out this error part because right now I don't have any error handling and I don't manage whether authentication is pending. So we don't need that. The switch off mode button, I'll use that later. For now, I just want to get something onto the screen, so I'll say create user here. If I now go back to the main page, I got this form still. Styling, of course, the layout is not great. I mean, I guess we can easily fix it though, by simply adding like a padding top here to the body of 16 or something, so that it's pushed down a little bit at least. And I also want to set the text color for this form here. So let's set text stone 900. And let's see what we get. I do expect an error here, but let's see what we get. Create user. Failed to create user. No such table user. So better-auth did not find a user table. That's weird because I thought it created one here. So of all the errors I expected, this is not one of them. No such table user. Could you do it in page TSX? Yeah, I could move that server action to page TSX since it's not a client component. Why am I getting this error here? Is this some kind of bug or? It's a different thread. This is not about better-auth. Okay, it does not look like there's a bunch of posts about this error. So that is really weird. No such table user. Where is this coming from? I have the migration, I ran the migration, and in there, it creates a user table, which is named user. So obviously I would expect this to work when I try to create a user. This is a really weird error. Now, what I'll do is I'll take a look at the GitHub repo of better-auth and quickly search there. Maybe I find this error here and there is like an obvious solution. Yeah, I'm utilizing a custom table. Well, I'm not doing that here. So that's not an error other people seemed to get. Really weird. Really weird. I guess I can try restarting the server, but that should not make a difference here. You can also try running those migrations again, of course, but I did run them before, right? So I guess that should not make a difference. But let's try it again. I can also delete the database and recreate it. That would be another thing we can do. So let's try again. Okay. Whatever. Now it worked. Now it worked. We were redirected, as you can see, and a user was created. Here are the details. Some token, like the session token probably, user ID, email, and so on. So that worked. And that's great. We got user creation working. Yeah, those are the best fixes, exactly. That's always amazing. Just try it again. It's like if you have a problem with your computer, I think the steps are restart, reinstall, rebuy, right? That's how you fix all the problems. Yeah, looking at the database would have been the next step in line, but thankfully it worked. Okay, so obviously right now we got no route protection. I can visit this route no matter if we're logged in or not, but now we are logged in, and better-auth manages sessions with session cookies. So actually, if I take a look at the application tab here, not at session storage, but at cookies, I would have guessed that we see a cookie here, to be honest. Weird that I don't. But maybe it's storing sessions in some other place. I haven't looked at the docs. Anyways, we got our... Or maybe I have to... Do I have to set something here when I log a user in? Do I have to set a cookie with help of Next.js? That's how I can get access to a session. Okay, so that's interesting too. Let's give this a try. I'm not convinced that it has this session information here on the client side. So if I go to this image gen page, and I can't use this here, of course, because this is a client component, not a server component. So I guess let's try this on the root page then, just to see whether this works. Let's import the, is it not the auth client? Is it auth? Yeah. So the backend auth object, and make this an async function, which it can be since it's a server component. Now, if I use headers as provided by Next.js, let's see what this gives us. If this is set somehow, if it knows something about the session. So if I go back to the starting page now, after creating a user, this is null. That's kind of what I expected, because sure, I'm creating a user in this action here. It's definitely getting created in the database, but I'm not returning, or I'm not setting any cookies after creating that user here. So how would the running Next.js server know that this request coming from my browser is from a logged in user? And I know that users that are created should be signed in automatically, because there is this auto sign-in feature. Auto sign-in, and not after verification, but auto sign. There is some, I read this somewhere in the docs, that they automatically sign users which are created in, so that users are automatically treated as logged in. Hi Max, I'm a huge fan of your work. Could you please consider making your new React book more affordable in Brazil, considering our purchasing power? I have zero influence on that. I'm very sorry about that. The whole book, I wrote the book, and now I have a publisher who does all the rest. I don't even know in which markets or in which country-specific stores it might be offered. Unfortunately, I also have no influence on the price there. I'm very sorry about that. I guess as an alternative, my React course, for example, is offered at different prices. I mean, it's discounted all the time anyways on Udemy, but it is also offered for different prices for different regions of the world. So there's that at least. Okay, so not 100% sure, and I'm not sure. This guide here it's not that helpful, right? It's not telling me a lot about how I should handle this whole authentication part. When you call a function that needs to set cookies, like cookies won't be set. This is because server actions need to use the cookies helper. To simplify this, oh, reading the docs, that's a good idea. So you can use the Next Cookies plugin. So, okay, it can't set cookies because in Next.js, it needs access to the cookies function provided by Next.js. So we need to register this plugin. Reading helps. So in my server auth.ts file here, I have to add plugins and add the next, what's the name? Next Cookies. The Next Cookies plugin, like this. And that then seems to give better-auth access to that cookies object or this cookies function provided by Next.js. So I would assume that now if I create a new user, if I click create user, it again fails because my password is too short, and it crashes because I'm currently not handling errors in any other way. Okay, so sure thing. Let's create one with a longer password. Now this works. And now it hopefully has some cookies set here. No. Why? Why not? Now when you call functions that set cookies, they will automatically be set. Maybe I need to restart the server. Maybe that is the problem again. So let's try this again. Okay, I'm not getting my cookies today, I see. Really weird. I wonder if redirecting is the problem, but I guess that should work. I mean, if I now go back to the starting page where I try to read that session, it's still null, yeah, as expected, because those cookies aren't really set. So, but this is all I need to do, they're telling me, right? Reading the docs always beats ChatGPT, yeah. I guess the next level is to take the docs, pass it to an AI, and then ask questions about the AI, though I feel like I'm still at the point where I'm quicker if I just search for the result in the docs myself than taking the long route, but that might be wrong. First of all, love you, big fan of you. I have a question. How can I remember all the JavaScript tricky parts, like your JavaScript tricky parts concepts, at least in an interview? Yeah, like remembering all these tricky parts is like remembering all these algorithms and data structures. It's unfortunately probably impossible. Now, when it comes to tricky parts in JavaScript, there are a couple of classics like related to coercion and how you can convert one type to the other and it behaves weirdly. So there are a couple of things there which you probably can remember. I guess the best way to remember that stuff is, again, to build like a very basic playground, have like a very simple page which just imports a script and write down all like basic code, simple code, dummy code for all these quirks and features JavaScript offers, write it down there, and repeat that process like after a few days if you really want to memorize those things, because I'm not even sure if you need to memorize them for interviews, and definitely not for your day-to-day work. You will occasionally stumble across some weird parts, and at some point you will just remember them automatically. I'm not sure if you really need them for an interview, but if you do want to remember them, repeating it with a few days of break in between might be the way to go. Okay, so at this point, I'm not sure why I'm not getting any cookies set, because I do have this plugin here. Next Cookies, plugins. It's exactly that code imported from better-auth Next.js, and still it's not doing what I want it to do. One other thing though, oh, I got an idea. I am using this client object for signing up because that is what I learned in the installation docs, right? But here it looks like this server-side better-auth object also offers sign in and maybe also sign up related methods. So maybe since server actions run on the server, it's not a good idea to use the client-side object here. Maybe I should use the server-side one here. And then access API. And then let's see. Sign up email. And pass a body, an object to it, which has a body. And then I get back something else, I guess. I get back a result. Does this not have an error? No, okay. So let's not do this. Let's console log the result here. Maybe this is what I should call in such a server action. Maybe that does the trick. Let's see. Let's see if that works. Seems to work. And now there's the cookie. We got a cookie. Here it is. We got a better-auth cookie now. Finally, it's working. So I have to say the docs not super clear here. I mean, they do mention it here, but in the installation part, they actually mention that you need to set up the client-side stuff, which you seemingly don't need to do when using Next.js, which makes sense because server actions run on the server, but still a bit confusing. Anyways, now it seems to work. And I would imagine that now if I go back to the starting page where I try to read my session, I got that session data here. Yes, I have it here. Okay, so now I am able to create users, have that session cookie, and extract that session information on the server. That's all working now. Okay. In Bangladesh, they always ask this kind of tricky question. That is really not very kind. Now I want to know how much should I learn for getting a first job as a developer, like when something write a post here, something I don't know. Well, of course, pretty hard to answer this. I don't know what exactly they might be asking for. I don't know exactly which job you're applying for. But in general, what I said before too, if you want to prepare for an interview, if you want to like become better, it's really all about building stuff. It's unfortunately the same boring answer every time. Of course, there are courses, books, tutorials. It's all great. It's all useful. But to become better and to be able to like use that knowledge when you're put in the spot, when you're in an interview, you need to use it over and over again for building stuff, building demo projects, dummy projects. It can be simple projects like the one I'm trying to build here. It doesn't have to be super complex. It doesn't have to have like 30 different features. I mean, this is an ugly app which has barely working authentication, but I'm learning a lot about better-auth here. And that's really the idea behind building stuff. It doesn't have to be beautiful, it doesn't have to be great, but applying that knowledge is really, like, in my opinion, the only way of like getting better and being able to use it when you need it. Okay, so here we got that sign up working, and now it's actually the time where I kind of need to leave. Unfortunately, I'm not even close to building everything I wanted to build, and there are still a couple of bugs in this application, of course. And for example, we can visit the image generation route without signing in at all. I mean, we are signed in right now, but we were able to visit it before too. We would need route protection. To avoid this, we need a way of switching between sign up and log in here. I guess route protection is what we would implement with such a middleware here. So maybe that's like the last thing I try to do here. and then I'll call it a day for now. In Next.js, middleware doesn't have access to any node APIs, so you can't use the usual auth instance to validate sessions directly. Instead, you can make a request to the API route to get the session using the request headers. Here's how it looks. Okay, maybe that is also something I should try at a later point of time when I have more time, because it looks like something where things can also go wrong quite a bit. So of course, middleware is something we have in general in Next.js. You can add such a middleware TS file. Let's try it real quick. You can add a middleware TS file. I think in the app folder. Is it added in the app folder? In the root of your project. Okay, so not in the app folder. And in there, we need this code essentially. Now they are using auth like this. Okay, let's see. We're sending a fetch request to one of these API routes that are set up by better-auth. So this route should exist on our server, even though we did not create it, but it's this /API/auth/something set up by better-auth, and that's why we created this catch-all route. So get session will be used here for this, in this catch-all segment. That's where it will be caught. Sending this to our own server. So we're sending a request to our own server here to basically validate if the user is logged in. Because when a request is sent, the cookies that belong to this server to which the request is sent are attached to the request, so that auth cookie is attached to it. Then it is validated, and then this here returns either a session or not. If it does not return a session, we redirect to the starting page here, let's say. Otherwise, we return or we allow access to the page the user wanted to go to with help of this next response object that is provided by Next. And I want to protect my image gen route here. So that's how you tell Next.js that this middleware here, this middleware function should be executed for every request that's targeting this image gen route or whichever other routes you might be adding here. At least that's the theory. Now, of course, currently I am logged in. So theoretically, I should be able to go there. However, if I now delete this cookie with my dev tools, I can't go there. So that worked better than expected. Yeah. If I now create a new user, because I can't log in, because I haven't added that logic yet, then I'm redirected and that works again, and reloading also works because that cookie is set. So that is all working. Yeah, so that's it. That's it. I have to go, unfortunately. Sorry for not being able to finish it all, leave alone polish it. Still, I hope you liked it, got a lot out of it. I will probably continue working on this app in a future stream because I'd like to finish it. I'd like to learn a bit more about Next.auth, but we'll see. I will upload the video, the recording of this stream to this this YouTube channel, Maximilian Extended. I will upload it to that. And yeah, with that, do you mind mentioning your current time in your country? It's currently 7 p.m., a bit after 7 p.m. So thank you all for being part of this stream. I hope you liked it. I'll try to tweak things here and there for future streams to make them better and better. And we'll try to finish this app and build other exciting apps in future streams. Be a bit more realistic regarding the scope. And yeah, I hope you liked it and got a lot out of it. How do you learn those concepts? How can I learn it like you? As I said before, it's all about building stuff. I'm doing this for many years now, so that's how you get experience. It's really about applying the knowledge, building stuff. And you saw it here. I ran into some problems, even for stuff I have used in the past, but it's been too long. So I forgot some details here and there. And then it's really just about all reading error messages, looking things up, and solving these problems that are thrown at you. Of course, you can also use AI, just don't blindly trust it. Don't blindly copy its results, because you won't learn a lot from that. So, thank you all so much. See you in the future. Bye.